Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to Mansplaining. That's what I've decided to call this segment, since it involves me sitting in the car explaining things, and Mimi likes to call it mansplaining when men like to overly explain something like I'm doing right now. Anyway, today I want to talk more about Netrunner. It continues to be like the biggest thing on my mind, so obviously it's all I really want to do videos about. Today I wanted to talk specifically about Cube, which is a format first invented by Magic players, as many of them are. And basically I feel like suits Netrunner even more than it does Magic. So, a Magic Cube is basically a collection of cards that you draft from. So instead of drafting from booster packs like normal, you know, where you open up some booster packs, and if you don't know what draft is, look it up. I can't go down to that basic level. Anyway, so in Cube, you build kind of enough cards for, say, 8 people, maybe even 16 people to draft, and then keep those cards, you know, in one place so that you can randomize them and just draft them all at once. The reason that this is really a great format for Netrunner is because it's a living card game. Most of the players already own all of the cards. So the nice thing about drafting Magic is because you generally don't own all the cards, you can, you know, build up your collection by drafting. You know, you can just open up booster packs and collect cards that way, and then you're playing a game as you collect them. But with the non-randomized packs of Netrunner, you know, you have a playset of everything. There's really no reason to be collecting more cards. So when they introduced the draft format, a lot of people really didn't like the idea of it because, you know, you're just getting extra copies of a card that you don't want. You know, after you're done with them, you're not really gonna use them for anything unless you're just building multiple copies of a deck, and for that you need to buy, like, way more cards. I don't mean multiple copies of a deck, I mean multiple decks using the same card. Anyway, so the traditional way in Magic to do a cube is to only have one copy of each card that's in the cube. Netrunner doesn't really have a big enough card pool for that. So what I've been doing is basically having cards appear in there multiple times based on their sort of power level, but not really. I'll get to that in a second. So I've used that concept of rarity that they have in Magic, and basically a common card I'm putting 5 copies in the cube, a uncommon card I'm putting 3, and a rare card I'm putting 1. So it means that, you know, cards like Sand City Grid and Astor Script, you only have 1 copy of them. Same way with Scorched Earth. So, you know, none of those strategies are going to get as out of control as they do in Constructed. You know, they're still strong cards on their own, but they're nowhere near the power level they are when you can have 3 copies of them. And so, you know, what I'm really focusing on isn't necessarily power level, although that certainly factors into it. It's mostly based more on what cards see the most play. So cards that you see all the time in Constructed that are auto-includes, like Jackson Howard, are going to be rare. Cards that you basically don't see in Constructed decks are going to be common. And then cards that are somewhere in between there that, you know, see some Constructed play but not a ton are generally going to be uncommon. And so that's how I've set it up. I have, reworked it and tweaked it. I've done 2 drafts with it so far, and it's going marvelously. The first draft definitely had some issues, but I've moved on. So the main issue in the first draft is at the rare level, I knew the cards that are kind of silver bullets, cards that are specifically designed to combat a certain style of play. Plascrete Carapace is the perfect example, because Plascrete is designed to stop people from being able to play Scorched Earth. I want to design the cube itself to prevent people from getting too abusive with Scorched Earth. Again, there's only 1 copy of it. But meat damage in general, I'm going to have at a lower power level, so that Plascrete is not necessary. So I don't want cards like Plascrete in the cube at all. But in the first draft of the cube, I wasn't really paying as much attention to that kind of cube, at that kind of card at the common level. With commons, I was just kind of throwing in whatever doesn't see play. But I realized after the first draft that a lot of those cards actually were designed as silver bullets against a type of deck that doesn't exist yet, which is why they don't see play. There are a lot of cards out there that are very specifically designed to combat a certain strategy, and it's just a strategy that's used. And they were awful in Cube, because those strategies weren't really used in Cube either. So for the second draft, I went through and I found all the cards that I made sure each card does something regardless of what your opponent is doing. It doesn't have to do a lot, and it can be better depending on what your opponent is doing, but it has to do something. The best example is E3 feedback implants. Now this card is fantastic against Bioroid Ice. For those unfamiliar, it basically just says you can pay 1 money to break a subroutine on ice that has already had at least 1 subroutine broken. So, in some ways it can be viewed as a silver bullet against Bioroid Ice, because you can just click them once and then pay for all the other subroutines, which is great. But it has a ton of uses on its own. For example, if you have a bad icebreaker, and you're paying like 2 or 3 credits, 3 really being only Worm, but even 2 credits to break subroutines, like Knight, which sees a decent amount of play, and Darwin, and some other garbage icebreakers. You can pay the 2 for the first subroutine, but then if you're trying to break something with like 4 subroutines, you can use E3 feedback implants to pay only 1 for the other 3 subroutines. So it saves you a decent chunk of change. It also synergizes with things like Grappling Hook, which will break all but 1 of the subroutines. Then you can just pay E3 1 to break the last one. So yeah, it's a good card that you can build around in your deck, rather than just relying on cards that your opponents have. So yeah, that card is in. Cards like Net Shield that are just, preventing damage are out, because, if your opponent isn't doing net damage, Net Shield is useless. So I'm leaving cards like that completely out of it. Alright, right, so I wanted to talk about the starters. Up until now, I've just been using the Cyber War starters, and they presented a few problems. Mainly, I feel that let me get back to, so in Netrunner, they put out these draft starters that are basically a small collection of cards that will help you out if you don't draft a particular kind of card. So they've got 2 Crypsis and 2 Armitage code busting, so that if you forget to draft icebreakers or you forget to draft money, then you've got a little bit of, stuff there. And on the Corp side, they give you 2 pad campaigns and 5 priority requisition, so that you can make the minimum agenda count, and you have some money cards again, because money is really important in Netrunner. So that's going fine, but what I'm finding is that with a lot of the really low-powered cards, the terrible icebreakers like Aurora and Peacock, which I still want in there at a common level, and so there's lots of Auroras and Peacocks floating around. You end up almost feeling like you'd rather just use Crypsis, because, Aurora is so inefficient that there are many instances where, it's actually more efficient to just use Crypsis. And so having Crypsis, as a 2 of in everybody's card pool makes those cards even less usable than they would be otherwise. I've been struggling with how to tweak the starters to make them still provide, there should be an icebreaker in the starter, and it should be able to break any kind of ice. And I don't like, in a later starter they used Overmind, which is a limited use icebreaker that can break anything, and I don't like that, because it doesn't actually really fill the role of, oh, I forgot to bring a sentry breaker, I need some way to break sentries. It doesn't fill that role. And so I don't like Overmind in that slot. I do kind of want to keep that slot neutral, but the more I look at it, I think I might actually put Worm in that slot, even though it's an Anarch card, because Worm is an icebreaker, and it will break any ice, but you're going to have to spend a lot of credits. Worm is an AI icebreaker. It will break any ice subroutine, but it will only do it if the strength on that ice is 0. Now, you can crank Worm up to the strength of that ice, and then, once it's at the strength of that ice, and you can do that for 1 credit each, and you can then reduce the strength of the ice back down using 1 credit each. And then you can, break a 0 strength subroutine for 3 credits. So this thing is expensive as heck. The fact that you have to spin it up and then spin it down means you're essentially paying 2 credits for each point of strength. Give or take a little. But then 3 to break. So, the camera's shaking around quite a bit. I think my windshield is vibrating. Anyway, don't worry about it. So yeah, you're paying 2 for strength, 3 to break, which is worse than any of the icebreakers you could draft, even Aurora and Peacock. So at that point, with 2 Worms in there instead of 2 Crypsises, you're really gonna want to draft icebreakers. Anything you can get. So that's going in there. Another one that is a much easier choice, pad campaigns also seem a little bit too good. Even when I draft a decent amount of money cards, I still often end up sticking the pad campaigns in there because it's just a good card. I'm thinking of putting private contracts in instead, because instead of just infinitely flowing 1 money at a time, that one is, you have to actually click for 2 money per click. And so, first of all, it mirrors Armitage code busting much better. But second of all, it's just not as good, because you have to spend more and more time on it to make it actually pay off. And if the runner gets to you before it's paid off, there's nothing you can do. Let's see, there was one other card. Oh yeah, priority requisition. Again, as neutral 5.3s go, it's actually kind of a decent card. What I'd really rather replace it with is Executive Retreat. That one's going to be a little bit harder because Executive Retreat is not as easy to get a hold of, especially since I need 5 copies for each starter, and my cube supports 8 people, so that's 40 copies of the card. I've got a place I can buy some from. In fact, quick shout out, boxcatgames.com. I don't know if they'll still be open by the time you're watching this, but they are one of the only websites that carries Netrunner singles. So that's a thing. If you want to buy Netrunner and not just buy a whole pack, there's a way to do it. Okay. So anyway, yeah, Executive Retreat is definitely worse than Priority Requisition in most cases, and so again, it makes for a better starter card. Because, yeah. I think that is about it. But yeah, really enjoying building the cube. Everything's going well with it. People seem to be enjoying it, and pretty soon I might actually be able to run, tournaments with it where we have people pay in $5 and give some prizes. So that'll be neat. Yeah, this video is already a bit long, so I'll get going. I'll try to keep posting videos like this. I don't know if there's really any demand for them. I had at least one person say that they missed the explaining in the car videos. So awesome. Yeah. Have fun. I'm gonna get back to driving now. Almost to work. Bye.